Hey everyone, this is Karen with Naturally with Karen, and I am live streaming from Canal Park, Duluth, inside of Caribou Coffee. I'm going to do a live stream tonight about dogs. I love dogs. I love going to dog parks. I love doing all kinds of doggy things. And I'm also going to talk about animal communication, which has been something that's been a really big deal for me most of my life. And a lot of people have expressed an interest in animal communication. They want to learn more about what it is, how you do it, how do you even get started. So I'd like to talk a little bit about dogs. And before I do that, I want to share something with you. Let's say that you're really trying to eat and live responsibly and stay healthy. You kind of Good to see you, Kim. You're trying to eat and live responsibly, and so you say to yourself, I want to go to a coffee shop too, but in light of everything that I've shared with you and about rebuilding and regenerating myself, I didn't really want to go for a coffee. And although I'm sitting at Caribou Coffee in Canal Park, which is a really cool place here in Duluth, I thought to myself, I really don't want to get a Caribou cooler or the twice as nice over ice, which is a matcha or a raspberry green tea with coffee ice cubes. So instead, I get what's called a reindeer here at Caribou, and it's called different things. I get that. And it was absolutely quiet and almost no one here when I came because it's about almost 6 o'clock. So instead, what I got was this, and it's called a rainbow. And you might be able to see that there's two sachets or tea bags, but they're called sachets. And these are called the caliente cinnamon. So I've got two of them in there. And maybe it might not be called a reindeer where you are, but you can ask for a steamed plain almond milk with the tea bags of your choice. So they had Earl Grey, I'm looking at them, a citrus, a black tea, a mango, and they have this hot cinnamon, and then they have lemon balm verbena, okay? Most of the time when you go to a coffee house, the matcha green tea is going to be like 50% sugar. So that's why I'm saying get your matcha green tea when you're at home. So you can get a steamed nut milk. You know, I got almond, pick almond or coconut generally. Soy would be my last choice if that's all I had. Kim, you brought up a really great point on your wall, and it really refreshed me that I don't want to lose oxygen. Oxygen is the basis for my lungs and keeping my heart going, right? So steamed almond milk and a couple of sachets or tea bags. And you can be having something delicious. If it's not sweet enough, you can add either a little bit of honey or stevia or whatever it is that you like. Now, I'm going to get started. I just came from the dog park and also from the Duluth Community Garden where I have my garden plot, number 8. And I went and got a bale of hay yesterday. It was $8.95 for a bale of hay. There's straw and hay. And apparently when you put them in your garden, you want to have the hay if you want to keep the moisture in and insulate it and also keep the weeds down. I didn't know that. So I get this bale of hay, and I've kind of got hay stuck all over me, but it's okay. It's kind of a chilly day, and we're expecting some rain tonight and really cooler temperatures down in the 30s with a possibility of a little bit of snow that won't stick. So I gave people a chance to get on. Let's get started. When it comes to puppies, generally you either, go in the days gone by, you went to a pet store or you went to someone's house and, someone had a litter of puppies. You took a puppy home with you, or, you saw puppies advertised in the newspaper and today it's on Craigslist, or, it might be that you went to an animal shelter and it's not a puppy, but you got an older dog, but you're bringing home an animal. And typically when we think about a dog is also, the word sound of dog is also associated with an unpleasant person, a person with a very unpleasant temperament and personality. We call you dog, what's up, dog? I mean, if you look it up and you look at the etymology, you'll find out that a dog is a negativistic way of, viewing a being. So, we're kind of looking at pig and dog and you chicken. You're such a chicken. And we debase and demoralize our other fellow animal beings, our sentient beings that we share life with. So I just want you to pause for a moment and think about the word sound of chicken, dog, and you pig, and how we've turned those into having really derogatory meanings. And then I want you to think for a moment about the word litter. Litter is what we use when we're talking about garbage that's strewn all over. It's litter. And if you do like I do, and periodically I type in a word and the definition, I look at it and I look to see what's the origin of the word, it really causes me sadness to think that a litter is equated with garbage, right? Or the origins of that word had to do with an animal's bedding. So you take a pup, and if you go to a mother dog with puppies and you take the puppy home, the puppy is no longer with its own mother, no longer with its siblings, no longer with its own dog family. It's no longer with its multiple generations of its own ancestors. And now it has to figure everything out, typically as if it's a puppy, as a baby, in your home. Would you just imagine for just a moment how smart and sensitive and intuitive you'd really have to be to do that, okay? Now, the next thing is the majority of people almost have an expectation when they get a puppy, even if it's only 7, sometimes 6 weeks, but certainly about 8 weeks old is like the standard. It really should be 12 weeks with mama minimum to get that breast milk and those autoimmunities, but we don't do that. We get kind of tired and fed up with all the puppies and the mess. And we send puppies home generally between 6 and 8 or 9 weeks, depending on how fast people adopt them. Or typically the word sound is buy a puppy because you want one. So let's adjust our word sound a little bit into adopting or rehoming an older dog instead of buying or getting, right? So typically you're going to go get a vet visit, and you're going to do a well puppy visit, just like a well child visit. And the veterinarian is, if it's like 90 point, some odd percent of veterinarians is going to recommend the gamut of vaccinations. So the DLPP, which is a distemper, leptospirosis, parvo vaccine. I'm going to get a little closer, hoping you can hear me because it's getting busy in here now. And of course, you're going to get a rabies that typically only lasts for about a year. Thereafter, you get more of an adult rabies immunization. And the veterinarian is going to start recommending a plethora of products. Hope it's not too loud. Let me know if you can hear me. Some of those are going to be pest management, like heartworm, which is a slow drip poison that your animal actually chews. It's like a little beef chew. And during the entire month, a poison is time released into their system. There are other things that drip down the back, the nape of the neck through the back of the animal, that also drip a poison into the animal's body, which makes it extremely comfortable for the human, but extremely uncomfortable for the dog, okay? When I do doggy consults, because I love dogs. I mean, you should see, I go absolutely crazy at the dog park. I'm calling everyone the little pumpkin, a little just amazing, cute ball of fur or whatever they are, but whatever kind of breed they are, they're beautiful to me. I just love dogs. I really do. I typically make dog treats and bring them and ask people if I can hand them out. I'll make them out of my chickpea flour. Back in the day, I used to make them out of spelt flour many years ago because the wheat makes them even more itchy, just like it does you, okay? Now let's talk about one more thing. Dogs that get the full gamut of vaccines get the same thing humans do. In fact, today we're calling dogs autistic. Dogs are being diagnosed with anxiety. Dogs are being diagnosed with thyroid issues and depression. It's no mystery. We know why it's happening. And there's things we can do about it. So 2 of the things we can do about it is you can do a consult with me. And if you go to naturallywithkaren.com and you click on consults, right underneath that is going to be a human and a canine forum. So I see dogs and doggy families, and I see humans. And everything that you need to write in about your dog and click submit is right there. And for it's about $100, we also can do a doggy hair tissue mineral analysis, which is going to give me a full printout on everything that's going on with your dog. So those are two things we can do that are amazing in addition to coaching. I have coached for people that were extremely well-to-do to people that just had absolutely nothing. I've given a lot of free coaching away. I've been living with dogs for over 50 years. I've rescued scores of pit bulls that were going to be killed in shelters in San Jose, where I grew up. And I did that because it took me a little bit of money. I rehomed the dogs. I can't keep every dog I have, right? And I've rehabilitated a lot of dogs. And I'm going to get into that really briefly because I want to save a big portion of today for animal communication. Let's talk a little bit about crating dogs. We think of it as civil and humane to get one of these boxes that has kind of the front metallic gate on it where they can see through it, and to put dogs in a box and to acclimate them to this box as their den, right? So that they can feel secure and go into a safe place. And it is a safe place, especially if you leave the door open and the dog can kind of get away from children, even children that are, under teenage, 8, 9, 10, and 11 can be too much for a dog, especially an older dog. They're just and they're hyper and they start to get on the dog's nerves, and the dog does need to have a place where it can go into a quiet place that's just the dog knows for a fact it can go there. But the other side is when you're working 8, 9 hours a day and you're stopping at the store or stopping for a few drinks, and the dog's got to spend 10 out of 24 hours a day sitting in a box that they can barely move, or maybe they can move and turn around in. But come on, how would you feel if that was you? It wouldn't feel good. And it's against your nature, but it's even more so against the dog's nature. And it starts to really spin them into a very negativistic energy. So that's the dog that comes to the dog park that's really wound up, that's bashing into everybody, that, doesn't want to listen and go home. And it's a happy dog often, but that's because it's a young dog, and the dog can only take so much of that. So think about crating. And think about, would I want to spend that much time in a box? I really wouldn't, okay? Training. A lot of people ask me, because I'll be at the dog park and I'll make suggestions about something. I've been around dogs for over 50 years. And anybody who's been around dogs for that long is going to be able to make suggestions because, I'm not new to dogs. So people will ask me, so are you a dog trainer? I say, no, actually, I don't want to be a dog trainer. I'm a dog trust builder and not a dog trainer. Now, I can always say, sit, lay down, roll over, and do all those things, or come now, right? And I can be an Army drill sergeant to the dogs, or I can lay down with my pack at night. I can make sure that I feed them first, my oldest dog, my senior dog first, okay? Because of the pack hierarchy, because of the nature of the pack, which I'll get into. And I take care of them. They get fresh filtered water in the morning, or if it's summertime, I meet their needs because they're not able to meet their needs. I make sure and get them out to go swimming. I make sure and get them out to socialize with other dogs. I make sure to get them out usually every single day, even if sometimes it feels like a headache. So I'm going to be the first one to tell you that almost 50 years, not only does it cost me a lot of money, but it also takes a lot of my time and a lot of my energy. I have to sweep the floor. I have to do a lot more mopping. I have to do a lot more shopping for their food because I don't just buy bags of food. And I have to go out and clean up the dog poop in the backyard every day. And it's time out of my day to take them out and walk. And you might say, that doesn't sound like very much. But if you were doing it every single day and one of your dogs was getting, older because he was a super big dog, then you would realize how much energy that takes, especially when they're snoring really loud and they have problems and they're aging. Rottweilers have been extremely inbred and they're having a lot more problems than some other dogs would. So I don't believe in training, And I really don't believe, unless you've got an electric fencing around your yard and you need to have that collar so your dog stays in a big area and doesn't get lost, for just going to the dog park and just going outside with you, a shock collar. You see dogs now with 2 and 3 collars around their neck. A shock collar or a collar that's got the big box on it that makes the screeching noise. Hey, I again wouldn't be comfortable with that. I don't think any of us would. So again, I can take Luna out, and 99% of the time she's going to do exactly what I ask her to do. And based on the type of dog that she is, I've been told repeatedly that's absolutely impossible, and that a lot of people actually chain this type of dog up. So I'm going to take a drink here. They actually require containments and tie-outs, which I don't do with her because she's going on 7 this August. Luna is a Leo, and she's every bit of a Leo personality. Okay, so I don't do shock collars. I understand that we need to have them if you've got if I had a 20-acre parcel, a bunch of land, which I will have one day, they'll be able to go out and go swimming and do what they do, but I'll probably put a collar on that says this is the perimeter and put flags up, right? And then eventually it's like, okay, I see the flag and I know that this is where I stay, okay? I want to send a big dose of love out to Elsie, my client, whose little dog, Remy, she's got 2 canine companions, I like to say, instead of pets. I don't really like the word sound pet. It's kind of like I get something that I can pet, and these are my family members. They're my pack, and I take care of them every day, and they take care of me. So if I'm laying down, Fire with his 31-inch neck and his 165 pounds, and has been eating raw food most of his life, his jaw strength is incredible, and he's not going to be anything like a kibble-fed dog. So little Remy got attacked in his own yard. They have electric fencing in Moose Lake, and I guess another dog came over and really did a lot of damage, and I'm just sending out so much love to Remy and Elsie and Jerry and Jasmine, Remy's canine companions. So that's what's going on there. Okay. When a dog has trauma like Remy has, one of the first things your veterinarian's going to do is err on the side of caution and give you antibiotics. And they're going to do that because the assumption is made that in the other dog's saliva, the offending dog, I'm going to let the noise go by. There's going to be an assumption that there's a pathological risk there due to an infection risk due to the other dog having a piercing bite. And Remy had to have some, what do you call them? They're like, not like shunts, but they're drains. They had to have drains put in where a dog's got substantially bitten, just like Fire did. Fire got really attacked at the dog park a couple years ago. Okay, so your veterinarian wants to equip you with a lot of worming, pest control, limes, heartworm, chemical. And, for the last 30 years, I've said, I'm just simply not going to do that. I mean, I have been feeding raw meat, the ancestral diet, this ancestral primordial diet for dogs for probably about 25 years. Just like with my healing work, a lot of people told me, because I typically had big bully breeds and rescued pit bulls and bully breeds, and the public hasn't always been super favorable about Presa Canarios and Cane Corsos and pit bulls and Rottweilers, especially Rottweilers. Today, there's a real negativistic outlook on Rottweilers. Even when I go to the dog park, Fire is very prejudiced because he's big, he's black, and he's powerful. And he's exceptionally big and muscular and powerful for a Rottweiler as well. So the chemicals and the constraints and the vaccinosis are a really big deal, okay? Now, dogs love water and they love swimming. And even if you say, well, my dog, or the dog that lives with me, my canine companion, doesn't really like that, given a little bit of time, I can actually help you to change that, because swimming is a really great outlet. And Dog parks are a really good outlet. I've got a little list of notes I wanted to cover today. So there's doggy daycares. I generally don't do doggy daycares because they require all of the vaccines, including a vaccine that you would basically be given yourself to prevent the common cold. And for dogs, it's called the Bordetella vaccine. And there's no way in hell I'm going to give that vaccine with all of the adjuvants and the additives in it. I'm already needing to detoxify the dog. So that's not something I'm willing to do. So there's doggy daycares, there's dog parks. When you go into a dog park, there's typically, you go into one gate and you're in a small containment area and you go through that gate and then you're in the main part of the dog park. When you go to city-run dog parks and not private dog parks like Gordy's Warming House that is local, if you're listening to this, like Christine and I. When you go to state-run dog parks, there's a list of rules on there. You need to walk your dog in with a leash. You need to make sure that there's no leash on your dog inside of the dog park. You need to make sure there's no children under the age of 9 because large dogs and groups of dogs are running really fast. I've actually been knocked over once before or had to bend my knees and kind of prepare for dogs that were just so busy in their play that they didn't notice they were going to knock into us. It doesn't happen very often, but imagine if you've got, a little 3 or 4-year-old child just kind of walking around in the dog park, they could get knocked over. So that's kind of the thing about that. Now, dogs are getting more cataracts and more of the things I talked about earlier, even autism, but they're getting cataracts, and cataracts take 90 days to form, and they're essentially a biofilm that goes over the eyes. And for that reason, you might have noticed that I was rebuilding myself using a lot of lemons and limes and garlic. Garlic is from the alum family, and it's not something that I would use all the time just because, even though I like the taste of it, because I grew up liking the taste, living close to Gilroy, the garlic capital where the garlic festivals are, but because it's really hard on stomach tissue. It burns stomach tissue like Dr. Sebi taught us about. And that was the first time I heard of that was from Dr. Sebi. So, but it's excellent for helping to break down biofilms and also to get rid of parasites. And so I'm using it for that reason, and so is citrus. Oranges, grapefruits, limes, especially key limes, like Dr. Sebi mentioned. So dogs have candida and ear issues, and if you do a consultation with me, I'll show you a surefire way to get your dogs to stop doing this thing where they're shaking their head all the time, and to stop licking their skin all the time. And I'll show you exactly why they get sores and exactly how I got, Luna through having repeated seizures. She hasn't had a seizure for quite some time now. Okay. Now, in session again at naturallywithkaren.com, you can click on consults and you can click on the wellness form for the canine. You can fill it out and click submit, and we'll set a time that's mutually convenient. I can also go over a canine hair test, so I can tell you exactly if your dog has been exposed to food or water, too many vaccines, or what it is, and we'll work on cleaning that out of your dog if you haven't waited too long. So don't wait too long until your dog's over like 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and it's really tricky to try to get all the detoxification in, just like it does for humans when they're over 70. It's like, well, in today's world, it makes it a little bit more difficult. Okay. Now, rescues. I did a lot of rescue dogs. I helped a couple of women in the Twin Cities that were part of bringing their dogs to schools, and the dogs would come in, and these were their own rescue dogs that they worked with and they trained. And the vet had said, you got to put the dog down. The dog's going to die. And here was this dog that was like this fabulous star. It was in the newspaper and everything. I'm not allowed to give her name because she wanted to keep it private. But she hired me to go over on 5 different occasions. And I worked with her dog, and her dog ended up living another 1.5 years. So she was pretty happy about that. I gave her a plan of action. I told her exactly why what the vet was recommending wasn't going to work. And I keep it humble, I keep it real. And just like the folks in the Twin Cities whose dogs had a pit bull, had many blood transfusions through the University of Minnesota Hospital, I showed them also with a $75 session at that time that they didn't need to go through all those hurdles. Okay. The last before we get on animal communication is elder dogs. And elder dogs, that brings up the question of euthanasia. We commonly call that putting the dog down. Okay. And today we have a lot of power over the dog's life. The dog can maybe sit in the house and go outside for an hour out of 24 hours, and it's supposed to sit here and sit there and sit here and go in the car and sit there and wait for you. And I'm going to let the loud noise go by. What happens most of the time at Gordy's warming house is that people come in, a couple, a single, a couple, a family of 4, a family of 5 or 6 or 7, and they eat their big fries and their burger and their blackberry milkshakes and all the things that they got there, their deep fried mushrooms and their fish baskets and their shrimp baskets. And we sit there with all this, to the dog, delicious smelling food. And the dog has been starving, living on dry, baked, hard kibble. And the people feel really good because they've been going out and buying Taste of the Wild or Eukanuba, or they go in and to PetSmart and they buy something that's one of the most expensive foods. But let me break this down. Everything that you buy in a bag is going to create a dry, compacted stool on the dog. And the dog might look beautiful for even the first 4 or 5 years, but eventually it's going to catch up because the dog is not getting essential fatty acids and omegas. And the only way you're going to get that is like some of the ways that I do with the frozen veggies and mixing in the coconut oil and the iodized sea salt. And then I take a couple of tablespoons of a type of a seaweed gel that I make. And I go over that with you in session and I put that in there. And I wasn't doing it for about 1.5 years when I was going through a lot of stress with a family member who was addicted. My dog started getting sores and more seizures, and the stress they were under and the stress I was under. But they too are rebuilding. You can't even see where the sores were on her leg. There's no more seizures. Their coats are looking great. They went through a major shed that was in itself also super challenging. But this is part of our loving them and staying the course for them. We don't just dispose of them because they're just not too fun anymore, right? I mean, this is part of not dog owning. This is part of loyal pack mentality. And that's the difference. I'm a wolf spirit shaman. As a wolf spirit shaman, I necessarily have a very high degree of loyalty and protection, honesty, and trust. And that is what wolf animal is all about. The wolf is the quintessential symbol of nature. And the dogs that we have today are a domesticated version of the wolf. All the way down to little Pablo, who's 5 pounds, who's been severely domesticated, all the way up to Luna, who is, quite a high integrity. Okay. So our elder dogs, we're putting them down when we decide that, this is kind of too much of a bother. I can't take this anymore. And if you can imagine what it's like for me sleeping on the floor and Fire just kind of throws his body around and wakes you up repeatedly in the middle of the night and snores really loud to the point that I had to put him out of the room last night because I was like, dude, I gotta sleep, and so do you. And I don't mean to be mean, but gotta sleep. Sleep's gotta come. So dogs, you shouldn't bring one home unless you know you're totally prepared. It's going to be many, 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 many years of shopping and cleaning and brushing and bathing. And it takes hours of my day to take care of a pack of 3. So it's a lot. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't want to live in a super cutesy apartment all by myself in a big city. I'd rather live in a small city with the dogs and get out with them because they are my best friends. I absolutely love them. I know dogs inside and out. I know cats too, but I know dogs even more. I know snakes, I know monkeys, I know large birds. I've had a lot of large birds in and out of my house that I've rescued and raised from babies, large parrots like macaws and African gray and cockatoos. So let's get into animal communication. Okay. I absolutely adore Caesar's work early on. I'm going to give him full respect. He grew up in Mexico and he observed and he came to America and brought the concept of dogs and energy. First thing is I want to give respect to Caesar Milan, because whether he's gone through divorce and problems, or sometimes he's too rough, or he's made mistakes in his life, he brought some very good medicine. And I appreciate what he's brought. I don't agree with absolutely everything he does, but I don't agree with absolutely everything I do either. So here's the deal. From the time I was a really, really little girl, around 1965, 4 or 5 years old, my parents had chow chows, which are the big Chinese, super hairy. One was a color that was red, and the other one was a black. Their names were Red and Pee-wee. And my parents probably had about 3 litters with the dogs. And I was put in charge from a very young age to go out and clean up after the dogs. And probably by the time I was 8 years old, had a big metal comb, and I would have to comb and pull back layers and layers. Most parents would tell you today that they wouldn't put their children with chow chows because they've got a really fickle temperament, that particular type of breed. But they also probably wouldn't put their children that were 10 years and under with squirrel monkeys and capuchins and woolly monkeys, but I was, and my parents had them in cages, and I would let them out and play with them, and they would bite other people, and they didn't bite me. I would go out with the passion flowers that were on the vine in San Jose, in our home on Searcy Drive, and I would go out, and I learned by connecting with the field. The field is, as Lynn McTaggart explains it, a ZPF, a 0-point field. Greg Braden describes it. I describe it as a static field of energy. Okay? It is a static. It's very electrostatic. So you are pure energy. Other beings are energy, right? All of us are in this field that almost feels like an etheric soup, except that this etheric soup, I have watched it, smelled it, tasted it, sensed it, tuned with it, attuned with it, tuned into it, seen the matrix. On one occasion, I have seen my true self. It is a field that quantum physics has absolutely proven exists. Since I know the field inside and out, to be understanding of the field is to know that all communication travels instantaneously. I think something, it travels. So I think something, it travels to the dog. The dog thinks something, it travels to me. When my son went for a year in the year 2014, he graduated high school and went to go live with his partner in Los Angeles. Her mother had left Minnesota and went to Los Angeles a couple years before. And they had been living with me, and then they went to go live over at her parents' house. I was living entirely alone from 2014 to 2015 until they came back for over a year, all the long winter in Northeast Minnesota. And it was the dogs and I. I don't have a television. I don't play the radio. I don't often play a lot of music. I do play music at my shop. So when I go in and out, 3 days a week and work with clients at the shop, I do. But other than that, it was a very quiet, regenerating time. And my life has been very much that way. So from the time I was a very, very small young girl, early 60s, mid to late 60s, I learned to connect with the field. I learned from the passion flowers. I learned from the monkeys. I learned from my parents' minor bird that they had brought home. The minor bird that wasn't my parents' bird, but they brought it into the home. I learned from my grandmother. So for me, and for anyone listening to this, Animal communication is your natural birthright. It's always been your birthright. It's always been something you can do. Now, the dogs don't tell me, hey, I want an ice cream sundae. But what they do is they communicate through something very different than what we're used to. I'll wait for the noise. When a dog is in the dog park, when I opened the gate today, I was at the dog park for probably over an hour with Luna and Pablo. When I open the gate, Luna goes in, and sometimes she'll just kind of give a to another dog that's kind of trying to kind of pin her in a corner. I tell people sometimes she's kind of verbal. She's signaling to that dog, hey, don't try to dominate me. The next thing that happens is everyone goes over and starts sniffing each other's butts because they're checking to see what's your energy, what's your integrity, right? In a world that was naturally balanced, where like the short story that I started to lead into yesterday, which is something that's brewing in my mind, what would it be like? Instead of running to pay property tax, instead of running to do these things, children could be barefoot on clean soil without cigarette butts, without plastic and containers all over, without wondering who sprayed glyphosate and Roundup on the ground, right? My mother sprayed Roundup in my front yard just barely, and I said, whoa, what are you doing? Stop. In 2002, she said, you don't want weeds. I said, the hell I don't. Weeds are my ally. They're my friend. The dandelion, the mullein, all of the different weeds are my friend. And I learned that from Susan Weed, who's an herbalist long before I became an herbalist in the year 2000 at American School of Herbalism in Santa Cruz. Now, dogs are communicating. I can look across the room and I can get communication from Luna instantly. If I go to feed another pack member, if I feed Pablo first, because I can tell he's really hungry, Luna's going to come over and kind of take it from me kind of rough, like, I really don't appreciate that you're not honoring the pack, the respect of the pack. I'm supposed to feed her first. She's the elder dog. She's also a female. She's also a different type of dog than they are. And so she knows that. Just like when she walks into the park and she holds her tail up really high and she kind of goes in there. Not only is she a Leo, just like, maybe you're a Leo or you're a Pisces or you're a Cancer. I'm a Cancer. I'm very Earth Mother. I'm extremely Earth Mother. But she goes in there and she knows her status. So the dogs are checking each other's integrity through smelling butts, smelling fur, coming up and putting a chin over the neck, maybe humping them. Can I get away with doing this? Can I get away with dominating you? And they might also be laying on their back, which is something I wanted to bring up earlier, or scratching their back, underneath something. And humans are sitting there and just going, oh my God, that's so funny. Look at what they're doing. And I'm like, that's not funny at all. What's really going on is the animal's got such a yeasty, dried out, essential fatty acid deficient coat that it's incessantly trying to itch itself, scratch itself by rolling on the ground like fire will do, right? Which is different than rolling itself like Luna will do. She'll roll herself in something to get a scent on her. She wants that scent on her because it kind of masks other people knowing who or what she is. Does that make sense? Okay. So animal communication happens between the dog and the squirrel, between the dog and the human, between the dog and the cat, between the dog and nature. It's going on all the time, except that, well, a lot of people think that animals, especially dogs, are not as intelligent. I find them to be equally, if not more so intelligent than most human beings. I don't have to use words. They're not an idiot. They know when it starts to get dusk and dark outside that mama lights the candles, starts to turn the lights down, and starts to prepare. And I've been doing this since before I've had my son. So under a non-stressful environment, the candles go on, the lights go down, we start getting ready, and they go in and take their positions to lay down on the floor. Animal communication is something anyone can do. It's not done with words. It's done with your actions. It's done with your intention. And it's done with sending mind to mind telepathic communication, which is not difficult to do. Okay? See what you said. Oh, yeah. What does it say over there? It says hot cinnamon spice. I bet you I could turn around. You could see it. Hold on a second. Let me see if I could do this. Ooh, looky. Okay, there's a rack over there of tea, and it says citron, green, hot cinnamon spice, mango, and Earl Grey. It's kind of where I'm at right now. I'll kind of give you a show here. Okay, I'll put the webcam back. That's kind of cool thing about the webcam. I don't know if you have any questions about animal communication. I am going to upload this to YouTube. And I do want to repeat something. I know a lot of people don't like things to be repeated, but this one bears repeating, so just bear me out for a moment. If you go into a dog park and you find it hard to get your dog on a leash and get them out on the leash, I was talking to a man, with a man, not to a man, with a man today at the Duluth Dog Park, which is a bigger dog park in Duluth with Luna and Pablo. And he had his 2 standard poodles, and he was walking them out for quite a distance, both of them on a leash. And I said, I just want to bring something up. I don't know if you've checked the Duluth Dog Park Facebook site, but I've contributed to that. And we're trying to make more people aware that dogs that are bigger dogs that may have a prey drive, the reason the rules are that we don't have small children in here. We don't have dogs on a leash anywhere except in the containment area where you're going in or out of your car before you get in the park. He said, well, what am I supposed to do to get my dogs out of the park? And I can't get them. I said, well, then you hold them by the collar and you walk them out, or I don't know what to tell you. But I said, I want to explain why, just so you don't think that I'm trying to be like the dog park police here. If I were to bring the Rottweiler, whose name is Faya, into the park, and he's fine with the 5-pound Chihuahua and all the poodles and everybody, he's the most gentle, sit on people's foot and be petted guy. He's just a love bug. And even when he was attacked, he didn't fight back with a doctor's dog, that $800 worth of damage a few years ago. You putting that leash on is creating a territory, and that territory sends a signal to the dog. If you were having upset conversations or arguments or stress before you came to the dog park, and you're now attached through a leash and a collar around a neck, it creates a different vibe, a different energy, like Caesar said, unstable energy. So you're bringing the dog to the dog park to release mental tension, to socialize with other dogs. You shouldn't come into the park and bring your ball thrower and engage with your companion if there's other dogs in the park, because it's there for you to let the dogs socialize with each other. They have more than enough time being stuck with you as a human and in a human home, which is very chaotic and uncomfortable for most dogs. Most dogs do not enjoy being in your home. They don't enjoy sitting there patiently while you eat a burger, which is their food, or you eat cheese curds, or you eat delicious French fries and smelling food, and then they go home and have a bowl of the dried graham crackers day after day after day after day. And some people believe that since having dry, bagged, baked food, which obviously doesn't have any life-giving force to it, right? It's definitely not an omnivorous or carnivorous, depending on how you think, diet that a dog would normally have. Raw meaty bones have enzymes, and so they naturally clean the teeth. So vets are getting over on you by asking you to clean the dog's teeth and give them anesthesia because you're not giving them raw meaty bones, and the enzymes from the meat that's, or the muscle meat that's closest to the bone, the dog working on that all day while you're at work gives them something to do, and it gives them enzymes. But humans, in their own neuroses about animals being so disconnected, not animal communicating, not being telepathic, not understanding that you don't bring a perfectly well pet puppy that you call your pet to the veterinarian and inject it full of vaccines and put chemicals all over it and protect to the point that you're killing them, and sterilize them, neuter or spay them at, a month, 6 months rather, a year. You exacerbate 7 major diseases with early sterilization. And that is proven, that is scientifically proven. The 7 most major diseases in canines are exacerbated. They're speeded up by taking away their hormones and sterilizing them. None of my 3 that live with me in the pack are sterilized. None of them have anything more than the state mandated vaccine. None of them have ever had a flea or a tick or a Lyme's disease or a heartworm medication. It is what it is. That's how I'm doing things. I choose not to poison them. I teach people not to poison them. I teach people to get out and let them get a mental release. I teach people to learn how to animal communicate. And I teach people how to trust instead of train. Trust instead of sticking them in a box and creating them. Trust and build a relationship. When you build a relationship, it takes time. When you heal, it takes time. Otherwise, you go to the doctor for yourself and you go get a pill or a surgery or a chemo or a radiation. If you do it my way, it's going to take you time. It's going to take you an investment, which means what? It's going to take you money. If you want to figure out what's really going on with your companion, trust building, feeding, veterinarian, vaccinosis, helping the dog, dog bites. I know some of the homeopathy. I am a certified raw ancestral feeder through Dogs Naturally magazine. I have my certifications. I've been raw feeding for over 25 years. I have rehabilitated a lot of dogs, a lot of canines. And it doesn't make me the know-it-all. It just means that I have something to bring to the table, and it might be something that really helps you. The biggest thing of all is that I absolutely love dogs. And in order to cut back on the factory farming, especially because I was seeing the ramifications of dogs absorbing all the copper and hormones and antibiotics and growth acceleration, I saw what it was doing to my pack for many years. So I started implementing several days a week of doing plant-based food and doggy bowls for them. And when I was going through a lot of stress, I wasn't able to do that as much. Legitimately, I wasn't able to do it and keep my sanity and not sleep. But we're bringing it back on. And so they get chickpea fritters and they get raw superfoods and they get all kinds of things. And so instead of just throwing apple cider vinegar and garlic on their food and coconut oil, you're just trying to counteract what's going on with giving them a lot of constipation and compacted stools. So I can show you a different way, and I can show you solutions that you might really like quite a bit. So I don't know if you have any questions, but I appreciate you staying with me. And I'll be downloading this and then uploading it to my YouTube channel where more people can gain access to it. So we've got a little bit of a cooler day today, especially over here in Canal Park in Duluth, Minnesota. And I'm sending you love. Mwah. And wishing you the best ever. Today is Friday. All right. Take good care.